Welcome, everyone. Yep, sorry. Welcome to Family Exchange for the month of June. I hope you're enjoying your early summer time. Just 2 minutes and we'll get started when everybody gets let in, and those stragglers are still coming. So hold on just 1 minute. We'll get right started. Okay. Um, Welcome to today's NTAC session, entitled The Power of Boundaries, Personal and Professional Growth Explored. Some of you may have thought you were coming to trauma-informed care, but the presenter for that had to bow out. And I'm so grateful to Stacy for agreeing. She was going to do the August presentation and she moved it up for us so we could cover this space, and we'll do trauma-informed care in August. So thank you so much, Stacy, for doing that. If you wouldn't mind, we're going to cover a few of the housekeeping items that we always do, but would you mind putting in the chat your name, location, your role? If you would put that in the chat, that really helps us know the reach that we have with this program. So thank you for doing that. As part of our session, we must provide you with this disclaimer. It's a presentation that was prepared by NTAC under a cooperative agreement with SAMHSA. While this event is supported by SAMHSA, the contents are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of SAMHSA, HHS, or the US government. We hope that there are not any security issues that happen today. I've never had that happen for me, but we still have to keep saying this. If there is a security issue, you're asked to disconnect, and we'll notify you by email how to join a new session. And thank you again for attending all of our NTACs, or this NTAC session, and hope that you will look into some of the other NTAC products that we provide as well. These are some of our national partners who help utilize their expertise and their subject matter knowledge to inform the field by creating products, resources, and sessions like this one to enhance the behavioral and mental health fields. As a center, our vision is that all children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health challenges will have access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive in a comprehensive and equitable system of care. We serve a wide cross-sector of audience, including everyone from state leaders to providers, to school workforce, infant and early childhood providers, community-based providers, peer supervisors, family partners, youth partners, and much, much more. Our services range from individual consultation to more in-depth sessions like this one, and peer learning exchanges and tools to help you. Our aim is to really create those outlets for communication, collaboration, resource sharing amongst all of us. Please also make sure you check out the resources and archived presentations on our website, or go to Contact Us link there to request consultation. And Bridget will put the NTAC website in the chat so that you have that. And it's also at the end of the slides, which you received a copy of. Before we get started, these are often questions that are asked, and we just want to make sure you know that you will be getting a certificate of completion for this event. It will come from Bridget's email that you can see there, BUKAW@CARS. So when you get that email, that will have your certificate with it. You can get a copy of this presentation. A copy was sent to you with your reminder, but it will also be sent in the follow-up email that comes within a couple of business days after this presentation. And can you get a copy of the recording? This is being recorded, and it will also be sent in the follow-up email. But in the case that you have others who you want to participate in this, not participate, but watch this, there's a YouTube channel for NTAC, and you can go there and look for it. And it takes a while for it to get there. So your best shot will be on the website and the email that you get following this. So welcome to today's session. Again, we're talking about the power of boundaries, personal and professional growth explored. And this is specifically for parent peer support workers and those who provide services in this field. So our agenda for today talks just goes through what the slides are going to cover. At the end, we'll talk about next month's topic, only we aren't doing a next month. I should have changed that. It will be August's topic. We take July off because it's a vacation time, and we want you to enjoy your vacation and your summer. So Stacy Morgan is the executive director for the Mental Health Transformation Alliance in North Carolina. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Stacy. And thanks again for stepping in and helping us out here.
No problem, no problem. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to kind of briefly go over boundaries, the power of those boundaries, and then how it is we can kind of handle those boundaries or identify some ways to set those boundaries. Next slide. And Lori is my slider because I had surgery on my shoulder, so I have one hand. So I'm changing my notes page with my other hand. So thank you, Lori, for being my helper. So that's with that. Okay, so you can put this in the chat, or can they unmute? Do they have the ability to talk?
Yeah, they can unmute and we can open it up. Sure.
Okay. So what comes to mind when you guys think of the word boundary? Like, what comes to mind to you guys? And like I said, you can put it in the chat or please unmute. Limitation, okay. Do not certain lines, okay. Rules.
Something that's good for me to have, but makes my stomach turn because it means I need to say no.
Yes. Yes.
Very good.
Yes, I like that. I'm one of those people. Restrictions. Safety. What was it? Safety? Okay. Safety, structure, teaching others how you like to be treated. Restrictions, respect, pushback, cross, what I'm willing to accept, a gate or fence to your peace. Exactly. Proper communication. Let me see here. Is there any new ones? Guidelines and protection. Anybody else? All right. So yes. So for me, I'm with Christelle on that. I think she's the one who said, something that is good, but also makes my stomach churn because I have an issue with no. So if you want to go to the next slide, so that's what I think of when we say the word boundaries. So what is a boundary? So a boundary is not about controlling another person's behavior. The other person can act however they want to. Instead, they're about protecting your own capacity and resources when engaging with others. So like you guys said, guidelines, policies, protection. And boundaries are personal boundaries or family boundaries. and there are work professional boundaries, and you also have boundaries with your friends. And there are probably some other areas that you guys could think of where boundaries could happen. Community boundaries, boundaries with the families that you work with. Even though that's a work boundary, that's also, as a peer support provider, we have a different relationship with families. So that's a different kind of boundary. It's not personal, but it's also not work right. It is work in a way. All right, next slide.
Can I just say that it's also a protection for yourself, for you and for the families that you work with?
Yes. And well, I'll give you some reasons why here. So with boundaries in those environments, those work environments, those working with the families, those family environments, it covers and includes physical. That means your body in your space. We got boundaries with our body in our space. Emotional and mental. It's understanding and respecting each other's feelings, thought, and emotional well-being. And in that that is a boundary. Where are those boundaries for the families that you work with, and where is the boundaries for you? Then there's time. Everybody has 24 hours in a day. It don't matter who you are, even if you don't even know the person. Everybody has 24 hours in a day. So that makes your time as valuable as anybody else's time. It is that 24 hours in a day is as valuable for you as it is to anybody else. Communication. This is essential for fostering effective and respectful conversations. You got to have boundaries when you have communication with families, communication with your partners. Each one style of communication does not fit all, right? It's not one size fits all world anymore. A conversation that you have with your partner with boundaries may look different with boundaries than it where you have it with your family. Digital. In today's world, setting limits on screen time and managing virtual communication can help assist in maintaining a healthy balance between the virtual and the real world, right? Like, you hear about that all the time. If you have too much digital coming in, you're not able to think clearly and have good output. So putting boundaries on that. Then there are the personal values. These reflect our core beliefs, morals, and ethics. And this includes culture. So culture, the family culture, our family cultures, our community cultures, the families that we're working with this culture, they have boundaries. Everybody has boundaries within their and identifying what those are. Then there are financial, of course, boundaries. There's also non-negotiables. And non-negotiables are what protects you from harm and defines what it is you absolutely feel is unacceptable to you. So it goes against all your ethical, it's just non-negotiables. It can include all the above. It can be like, yeah, my body, my space, don't come within 5 feet of me, whatever. And then there's ethical, and that governs our personal, intimate, and business relationships. That includes working with families. What is ethically correct and what is ethically incorrect? And you have ethical decisions to make and obligations working within your agency or organization. And you also have ethical obligations working alongside of families, no matter if you are an agency or a peer support provider. Can anyone think of any other boundaries? You can put them in the chat if you want to. Any other boundaries that you think, because there's others. These are just some that stood out to me because there's a whole list out there in the world. Is there anything else you guys can think of? You can put them in the chat or whatever.
Jackie says, I think emotional and mental boundaries can be the most underrated for people, but they are so important.
They are so very important. And even within that emotional and mental boundary, you also have self-care, right? That's a boundary. That is a boundary. And so we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then Haley, you said accepting or giving gifts can be difficult. Well, yes, yes. And that's another one of those saying no boundaries, right? I hate to do it, but I got to say no, right? I would say relationship and our family boundaries are also boundaries. Yes, those are also boundaries, areas where boundaries need to be. Sometimes as humans, we have those like unspoken boundaries, right? It's respect pretty much. And sometimes we all know or think we know what all those boundaries are for those unspoken ones are, and sometimes we don't. All right, next slide, please. So there are 8 healthy boundaries everybody should have. And that is asking to be treated right, respecting others, talking to them with respect, treating them as a human, speaking up for yourself. That's a healthy boundary, not just letting people walk over you or not say no, like, a lot of us in this field have a habit of doing, yeah, I'll do it, or, listening to your needs, what it is you need. Because if you can't listen to your needs, how can you listen to someone else's needs? You won't be able to filter out their needs away from your needs because your body's like, you need, you need sleep, you need self-care, you need X, Y, and Z. Saying no without guilt, that is a healthy boundary. I have gotten better at that one. But it's still not in this field. We want to help everybody. And it's a hard one. Honoring your time limits digitally or with families or with asks from work, right? A lot of times we are available 24/7 for everybody. And we let them in, not unless it's a crisis and it's a crisis, not taking a phone call from your supervisor at 9:00 at night. It is not being rude. It's self-care. It is self-care and needed. That's setting a boundary. And then take responsibility for your mistakes. If there's a mistake made, take responsibility for it. And then feeling safe to share your feelings. Having a safe person or someone, a go-to, whether it be at work, at home, both places, having that safe person to share your feelings, and then helping others without losing yourself. That is a big one in our field. Helping others without losing yourself. And if you can't do all of the above, then you or at least practice it in some areas, you will lose yourself. All right, you want to go to the next page, please, ma'am?
Sure.
So, question time. You guys didn't know you were going to be tested today, right? What are some areas where we have, or if you don't have, where we need boundaries in our role working with families, whether you're an agency person or a parent peer support provider? And again, unmute or chat, either or. What about, one of the things I just talked to about a minute ago, phone calls at all hours of the night, work hours, yep, phone calls at all hours of the night. We're available for our families 24/7, even if they're not in a crisis, because we know what it feels like to navigate systems, to have a child with needs. We know that. So we want to be there to ease that burden, that relief for these families. So we're available at all hours of the night. As an executive director, I answer emails at all hours of the night. Trying to get better with that, but all hours of the night. I've had surgery and I'm still working. So this is a do as I say, not as I do in some pieces of my life. But yes, so we have some coming in on the chat. So we have work hours, personal sharing, yes. Boundaries on personal sharing. And why is that? Does anybody want to say?
For us, and I'm the one that wrote that, is we are a lot of small communities, so sometimes what we share might affect somebody else that we don't have the right to put into that situation.
Exactly. Exactly. Small communities, everybody knows everybody. I teach this in our Family Partner 101 training here, about personal sharing. You only need to share what needs to be known. For that reason right there, and because if you were to ever stop working with someone or partnering with someone, being a small community, what could happen if something you shared that shouldn't go out between the two of you gets out into the community? It's red light, yellow light, green light statements is what we do. And that's how we identify putting boundaries on personal sharing. Not being a Mr. or Miss Know-it-all. Correct. We're not know-it-alls. We're not the fixers. Accountability, limit excuses. Yes. Privacy, especially when working in the same county or city that you live in. I tell families I have a work phone that is not answered after hours. We review crisis plan often. Yes. Great. We also review what a crisis and what is behavior to be handled at home or with natural supports. I really like that because that's helping the family set boundaries too, right? So that's helping the family identify how to set boundaries, because I don't know about you guys, when my son had I was experiencing a barrier or an issue, it was a crisis. Everything's a crisis, right? Everything's a crisis. It don't matter how big or small, it's a crisis for me. And so identifying really what is a crisis that will require you to call your parents' support provider or look out and lean on those natural supports, it's really helping that family set up and identify boundaries. Sharmika said, wanted to help more that what the resources will allow. We grew up with don't hurt people's feelings. Yes, there's that generation that you don't say no. You be nice to everybody. You respect everybody. You help them out. Generational disconnect, most definitely, and ensuring that families know that we are not crisis workers. We provide crisis numbers. That is correct. Setting them boundaries, letting them know. And two, you guys modeling these boundary settings will also help them set their boundaries in other areas of their life. All right, go to the next slide, please.
I saw one there, Stacy, that you didn't bring up, and that is transportation, not to be the transporter. I want you to know that some agencies have policies around that, and some don't, and some let you, and some don't let you. And so just know what your policies are around that, and know how to be safe.
Most definitely. And I'll review it as a resource here in a few, but there's also an ethics book for parent peer support. It's in the resources section of this presentation. It was completed with by Fredla, and I think a couple other organizations helped put it together, family-run organizations, but it has a lot of ethical situations in it for you being a parent peer support provider, like what should you do and what shouldn't you do? And not only does it give scenarios, but it also gives you the answer to the scenarios so that you can kind of work through that and think about, with your organization or your agency's policies and what it's saying in that ethical book. And one of that is transportation. Another one is that accepting gifts. Another one is Another one is buying food. So I really encourage you after we're done, we'll talk about it in a bit, but to look at that. So professional boundaries are guidelines established by legal, ethical, and professional standards, and they enable us to work effectively with a family without becoming personally entangled in those families' dynamics or problems. And in very, very small print down there, this did come out of that handbook that I was talking about that you will have the link to. So professional boundaries enable us to maintain the focus on the family, their values, and their cultures. It helps us not do that oversharing, not put the focus on us, but yet have that focus maintained on that family. Share components of your personal story only when it serves and supports to benefit that family. And again, that goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago, it being small communities. Even if it's not a small community, what are your red, yellow, and green light statements? Your red statements are no-goes, your yellow statements, and you could share it, but not maybe the whole thing or not in certain situations. And then green statements can be shared anywhere, any time of the day. And then it helps us to assist the family to identify and prioritize their needs. It helps us set boundaries with them so that you can focus on identifying and prioritizing their needs. It also enables us to mutually agree upon a plan to prioritize and address needs. And it establishes parameters of their relationships, such as how and when to communicate. And we talked about that. Not the all hours of the night, not the in the middle of a meeting, not that you got to walk out and it's probably not a crisis. Helping them identify what that crisis is and when to communicate that. It enables us to utilize skills to empower and model appropriate behavior for the family. Again, modeling the boundary setting. And it respects the family's confidentiality and laws governing information. Again, not going out in public in a small community and talking about Sally down the road when Sally's neighbor standing right behind you and can hear everything that you're saying that you work with her. That's that boundary of not of HIPAA law, of not sharing information that shouldn't be shared with anybody that the family hasn't authorized it to be shared with. And then recognizing when the family's needs are beyond the capacity of what you as a parent peer support provider and the resources you've connected them with can do, right? And then mutually agree when to end services. Bridget, you have your hand raised?
Hey, Stacy, I had a
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
How would you respond if to a client or a person who thinks they have a crisis, but either your organization or you don't think it's a crisis? Like, how do you find that middle ground?
Right. And so that's where, like someone said a minute ago, developing a crisis plan, and you guys sitting down as a team with a family and identifying what is a crisis, and you guys coming together and saying, hey, this is the list of when to call the parent peer support provider crisis. This is when to call natural supports and identify who those natural supports are. So you would already have that if you have that crisis plan or have that conversation with the family, identifying when that crisis and you need to be called. So if you've already identified when a crisis is, you're good, Bridget, you're good. When a crisis is and that family calls at 9 o'clock, then you know something's up, right? Like you can break your boundary there and just answer it. And if it's not really what was identified on the sheet, that's when you start your boundary of, let me call you tomorrow. I hear what you're saying, setting up that boundary and modeling that for, hey, this wasn't a crisis, call me at 9 o'clock. This is a crisis, call me tomorrow, and then modeling that for them. So that was a good question, Bridget. Laura?
So sometimes you have to look at it because we do mental health first aid, etc. And sometimes it is a crisis if they see it as a crisis. So you have to have that measurement in there also, because it may not be a crisis to us, but it could spiral whatever else is going on with them. So sometimes we have to weigh that.
Exactly. Exactly. And like I said in a minute ago, you know, as a family, when my son had a barrier, an issue that he encountered, everything was a crisis for me. But identifying which crisis warrants a boundary, to your boundary setting to not be so firm, if that makes sense. So yes, you are right. All right, next slide. And Robin said, crisis cycle can be found online. We brainstorm around this to identify with each family what is a crisis to them, then talk through them and how to handle them before they happen. I like that. All right. So now that we know how professional what they enable us to do.
What? I'm back.
Okay, will you switch? Can you switch slide, please?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and my computer froze up for just a minute, when to respect the family's confidentiality, sometimes the family doesn't respect their own confidentiality. So be prepared in those small communities when that family comes up to you in the grocery store and wants to talk to you about their issues. You know, and the whole idea is to teach them those skills of boundaries. So I'll be happy to talk to you about this and let's go someplace else to discuss this or whatever. But I think you need to be prepared for that in those small, especially in those small communities.
Yes, and in that book that this all came out of, there is a scenario just like that.
Yeah.
So I really can't say enough for you to explore those different solutions in that book with those scenarios. So
Yeah.
these boundaries help us avoid making decisions based on, you know, our own personal values and culture, right? Because we go in with an open mind, respecting other people's cultures, other people's values. And then it helps us avoid continuing to relate your personal story instead of focusing on the family's needs. The reason you're there is because of your lived experience, but that is not the reason you're sitting in that house helping that family. That's because the family needs your support, your lived experience expertise. And then it also helps us avoid rescuing the family instead of empowering them. So setting up these boundaries and modeling these boundaries will empower them to do the same. And we don't want to continue to rescue families, or we'll be in that's a boundary that's broken. That's a broken boundary system there. And it helps us avoid playing the hero by trying to do everything for the family rather than working as part of the team. And if someone had said it earlier that, you know, you're not miracle workers, or you're not, I told a class I was training the other day, you know, you don't have the magic wands. You're supporting the family and enabling them and setting them up, modeling what needs to be done so that they can do it for themselves. And then it helps us avoid discussing the family situation outside of work with family and friends. Disclosing information about the family to schools, agencies, or professionals without assigned consent from the family. And then it establishes that inappropriate relationships with any member of the family, such as physical, sexual, or romantic, or even business relationships. And it also doesn't mention in here, it helps avoid the accepting gifts. And the accepting gifts thing isn't something that, is meant to be, rude or anything like that. It helps so that in the future, you have a boundary for an inappropriate relationship, or, well, I gave you this, so you should do this for me. I gave you this, so you should do this. So that's what having boundaries helps us avoid. Next slide, please. So challenges to setting boundaries, we all have them, whether they be fear or response or confrontation. For example, being concerned about what someone says if you say no, or if they want to, how they perceive what you said. So other people's perceptions of you setting your boundaries. What if I don't say yes? What are people going to think of me? Right? Like, what if I don't tell this individual yes? Are they going to be mad? Are they going to yell at me? And then people pleasing tendencies. There are it's humankind, to please everybody, to make sure that everybody is happy, because we don't like confrontation. Some of us don't like confrontation. We don't like drama. And we often in our field want to do what's best for others, even if it may not be good for us, right? Even if in the end, if we do it, we're crossing a boundary, but it'll be okay, right? Because the other person will be happy. No. So that is a challenge to setting boundaries. And then never having had to assert boundaries before, never having to set them up in place, never having to have them, or don't know how to set them, because you've always gotten along with saying yes, yes, yes. My calendar's got 500 meetings on it for the week, and there's only 24 hours in a day, but I've said yes and everybody's happy. And then the lack of self-worth or self-respect. And you may have to never have had to assert yourself and say, hey, I am not working late today. My family is going to eat family dinner tonight together without me missing, because nobody's in a crisis. This paperwork can wait until the morning, so I am going to go home. So asserting yourself, not never having to do that, and say no. All right, will you go to the next one, please?
Okay, I'm just going to add that I was the executive director in Utah for 27 years, and if I had a regret, it was that not spending more time with my own family, because I was so worried about this organization being solvent. So that I don't want you to grow up and have that regret. So
now, as an executive director or a parent peer support provider, or as an individual, period, you can work around the clock. You can really work around the clock and miss out on things. I have there's sometimes I forget that and then have to reset up my boundaries. I let them go and then have to reestablish them because I'm like, hey, you don't do this anymore, or you don't do that anymore. So resetting those boundaries. Unhealthy boundaries are having a difficult time saying no. Having trouble accepting no from others. Like, other people has boundaries. Some people practice boundaries really, really good. And some of us have, an issue or a struggle with setting boundaries. Not clearly communicating one's needs and wants. That is an unhealthy boundary. And you easily compromise your personal values, beliefs, and opinions to satisfy others. Or what would I call that? Influenced by peers, or your community, or the world itself. So compromising your personal values, beliefs, and opinions, your culture, compromising it. Being coerced or manipulated to get others to do something they don't want to do. So manipulating others or having them do things, that's an unhealthy boundary. And oversharing oversharing information. And that is also a unhealthy boundary. We've talked about that over and over, the oversharing of personal information. If you're there to help a family who has, we'll say, DSS involvement, oversharing information about your process of entering the DSS system from day one, every minute of your involvement, in your experience with DSS, that's oversharing, because you're there to help the family, and they don't need to know that stuff, and that will take the focus off from them not having that boundary set up. All right, next one, please. So setting healthy boundaries is crucial for self-care and positive relationships. Boundaries differ from person to person and are mediated by variations in your culture, personality, and your social context. Lori's boundaries are totally different than my boundaries. Your boundaries is different from anybody that's in this room, in this Zoom room right now. It is defined by who you are, your culture, your personality, and your social context. Setting up healthy boundaries helps you avoid burnout. If we go 24/7, you're going to get burnt out on what it is you're doing, and one, lose the love and the passion for doing it. The reason that you're there is because you, as me, I want to give back to other families so they don't have to experience some of the barriers that I had to experience, and that they experience the successes that I have experienced. So setting boundaries can prevent that burnout. Having those time restrictions, helping them the family set boundaries, identifying the crises. It also leads to less resentment. Giving and helping others is a strength, but when it turns into doing too much for others, you may start to feel resentful, and setting boundaries about what you are able to do can reduce or even get rid of any resentment that you may come up with. If you do too much for others, it can be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so is calling yet again. They might want me to do X, Y, and Z. You know, you've already gone in with a preconceived notion of why this individual is calling you, about what they may need. And then setting healthy boundaries, sometimes boundaries we set need to be set with ourselves. For example, while you can feel like it's nice to escape to binge watch our favorite show, staying up late to binge watch on a work night can lead to you being tired the next day. Yeah, guilty of that, right? Setting a boundary with yourself to go to bed earlier can give your life a little more balance. So boundary setting first starts within you. All right. Next slide, please. So having not setting healthy boundaries can lead to burnout and stress, like just stress. Like, I got to do this, I got to do this. I didn't say no, so I've got 500 meetings next week I've got to fulfill to make everybody happy but myself. So stress or burnout is our body's response to what our body feels as a real or perceived threat, right? Stress is an internal alarm that prepares that body to take action. Next slide. And you went the wrong direction. Yes,
Sorry.
ma'am. You're okay.
There you go.
Thank you. So this is a list, some signs of stress, right? Headaches, eye strain, jaw clenching, tight neck and shoulders, chest pains, heart palpitations, an upset stomach, rashes, constipation, excessive sweating, teeth grinding, nervous tics, sleeplessness, blushing, shortness of breath. You know, I am sure there are others. We could probably go on because, again, boundaries are individual for everybody, and so is stress. Your body's internal alarm telling you, hey, put up your boundaries. You're getting stressed out, you're taking on too much, you're not doing you, and you're going to get burnt out. All right, next slide. So the next photo has two identical dolphins, and a study at St. Mary's has found that a person under stress would find differences in the two dolphins. if there are many differences found between both dolphins, it means that the person is experiencing the great amount of stress. So Lori, what I want you to do is flip the slide fast to the next one and then flip back to this one. Just like fast, like flip, flip. Now flip back. So what did you guys see? Did you see two identical dolphins? And you guys can put in the thing what you saw. A dolphin and a cow. So you must be
a dolphin and a
cow.
cow.
Cow and a dolphin.
A dolphin and a cow.
Dolphin and a cow. So when we did, hey, those of you seeing a dolphin and a cow, you must be, wow, I'm stressed out. Right? Right? You can flip to the next ones. It is a dolphin and a cow. We do this to kind of like break up the monotony and to be like, hey, oh my gosh, I need my eyes checked. Yes, it is a dolphin and a cow. But that's what stress can do to us, right? Like it can make us see things or perceive things that aren't really there. If our bodies get so stressed out, we'll see a dolphin and a cow. Instead of two dolphins. I love it. I need my eyes checked. All right.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
It kind of looked like when I saw the picture, I was thinking like the dolphin and the cow. So the cow's out of sync. It's not where it's supposed to belong. That's the dolphin's place, but it's taking on so much. It's not a dolphin, it's a cow that's taking on so much stress. It's jumping in the dolphin's lane into the water. And it doesn't even belong there because he's not in his own skin. He's doing too much.
There you go. He hasn't set his boundaries up. Now he's in the water. Right? Like he has no boundaries.
I like that.
He done told this dolphin he's gonna go swimming. He can't swim in the ocean, you know, not that long at least with no air. Yeah, so he hasn't set up his boundaries. I love that. I love that. All right, next slide. So how do you avoid this stress? Set priorities. Focus on the most important things and let the less important things go. That's setting a boundary, right? Getting things done on time, again, that's setting another boundary. Delegating, asking others to help you. It's okay to say yes to something knowing that you have a partner in crime or someone who's going to support you in helping get it done, and delegating those things. Don't be like, well, I'm the only one that can do this. Or sometimes with my kids or my grandkids, I'm like, well, I could ask them to do it, but if they do it, then I'm just going to have to redo it. So I might as well just do it myself, right? No, delegate and let someone do it. That is setting a boundary. Tell the truth. Resolve conflicts and don't hold grudges. Telling the truth and resolving conflicts and not holding grudges. You can walk around all day feeling guilty and emotional inside. That is helping your emotional and your mental boundaries be able to be set. And then set those boundaries. Set those boundaries. Make sure they're there. And make sure that you're practicing adhering to those boundaries that you set within yourself, and then practicing self-care so that you can continue to set the boundaries and be able to help others. Because if we don't have the boundaries in place, we have stress and we aren't practicing self-care, setting those boundaries. It's kind of like putting on, when you're in an airplane, for those of you that have been on a plane, they say, put the mask on yourself first before you put it on your child sitting next to you. If you can't help yourself and set your boundaries, you can't help that family. You can't put that air mask on that family. You can't model boundary setting. You can't share your expertise of lived experience with that family. Sure, Mika, that's how I just do it myself. Yes, I have done that. And then I say, nope, I got to step back. I've got that boundary set. I've got to let them do it. I tell parents to do it together 3 times, instruct 3 times, monitor, and then give it away. I like that.
That's a great idea.
Yep, I really do.
That's a great strategy, Robin. Thank you.
Yep, I like that. Next slide, please. So setting those healthy boundaries. Resist reactivity. Don't react to stressful situations. Avoid you statements. It can sound accusatory and puts you or your partner or your family in a defensive mode if you use you statements. So think about your choice of words and using a calm, even tone. That way you're practicing boundary setting and partnership. Be respectful. Be respectful of other people's, respect cultures, respect community, respect the family's decisions. Avoid ghosting. Don't be like, oh my gosh, this family is just too much. I can't do this. I'm not doing it. That's ghosting. Ghosting is not just in dating. It is in other relationships and other areas. Avoid gossiping. It can be tempting to discuss problems with other colleagues, but then this can lead to not addressing the issue directly and calmly with other people involved in it, or oversharing information that you're not supposed to be sharing. And then set boundaries for yourself with telecommuting, teleworking. Now that most of us can work from home, some of us, I am sure, work 24/7, and then we have smartphones in our hands. We blur the line for working from home and being home. Our home is our workplace for some of us, and so we blur that line. Have a firm stop, set a timer, set a timer. I'm famous for, well, let me just answer this one email, and then an hour later, I'm still answering emails. Set a timer, stick to your boundaries. And then know who to reach out to. Talk with your supervisor. Talk with someone who feels safe. And then have an accountability buddy, whether that be a family member, whether that be a work colleague, or both, one in each setting, that helps you be accountable for adhering to your boundaries. Talk with them what your boundaries are, what your non-negotiables are, and then help you keep your boundaries intact so that you're able to do what it is you need to do. All right, next slide.
Oh, there you go.
So there you go. Thank you. I cannot say this enough, okay? Any type of boundary setting is self-care. Whether you're setting them for yourself, whether you're setting them with family members, whether you're setting them with families you work with, whether you're setting them with your work environment, any type of boundary setting is self-care. Will enable you to not get stressed out, burned out, and continue doing the job that it is that you're passionate for. And also, boundary setting, where you start at is with yourself. You don't even have to start, okay, go big or go home, set boundaries, go out tomorrow. Stacey said you need to set boundaries, and go out tomorrow and set boundaries everywhere. Work, home, yourself, set them. No, start small and then let your boundary expand from there. That is self-care, and practice self-care. Not only boundary setting self-care, but practice self-care. Next slide, please. These are the resources that I used, that I look at. One of them, again, being the Fredlow's Ethics and Peer Support, Balancing Your Lived Experience and Professional Roles. That's got a lot of scenarios, a lot of information. Some of this information came out of there. How to set healthy boundaries with anyone. This is a guide to setting limits with parents, partners, friends, coworkers. And then there is a little quiz so that you can reflect. Like, you might be okay, my boundaries are good, I'm not stressed out. Take this quiz, see what your boundaries, see what you come up with. Maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised, like, oh, hey, I do need to set a little bit more boundaries, or adhere to some boundaries that I have set that I've gotten a little lax, and let some of them go. All right, next slide. So I'm going to open this up. I'm done preaching at you and talking to you. To have some discussion. I encourage you to set boundaries. I encourage you to get accountability buddy that helps you adhere to your boundaries. And you can be accountability buddies for each other for your boundaries. And just have that safe person to go to. So do you have the ability to set boundaries? And anybody can open up, unmute. Or do you guys find that it's a struggle to set boundaries in your role?
This is Terry Cisneros. I think for me, I've worked a lot on trying to find my boundaries. I think the part I struggle with is that I know my boundaries, but they don't necessarily match up with what, like, quote unquote professional boundaries are, because I have to keep in mind that I've done this way before. This is just who I am and what I've done with my lived experience throughout my life. And so when it became a job, there are boundaries set that are very healthy and good for me, but it might be a boundary crossed. And I don't mean like gifts and stuff like that. That's obvious boundaries, but like time or energy that I can expend because I understand in a way, because I've been through it, that probably somebody else may not.
Mm-hmm.
And so mine don't always match the professional when it comes to like probably expending more energy and time than
Right. And, that's okay, right? Like, if your boundaries may not match up because we're all individual, like I said earlier, and it's not one set of boundaries meets all, right? It's not one size fits all
right.
type of, right? And so that's okay. So when your boundaries, so I have a follow-up question for you. So when your boundaries don't match up, like what do you do? So like what are some things that you have done when your boundaries don't match up with one of your partners?
Well, I share what I'm doing right now. I share with them that it may look from their angle that I'm, that it's not healthy for me, not necessarily because of the way how it's impacting me, but because to them that seems like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But when you've dealt with it, especially personally, we all know personally, we've carried a lot for our families, our children, whoever. So it's literally reduced for us. If that, I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but it's reduced for us. So it's like, okay, this is a boundary for me. So I try to just share my insight and how it makes sense and how it makes sense to me, so that it gives them a little bit more opportunity to look at it from that angle. Because I feel like it's a two-way street. We have to have boundaries with families, but we also have to have our boundaries with our colleagues as well. Like, I respect what you're saying. You're trying to take care of me, but I promise you, I know this is not expending me. This is not burning me out. This is something that's actually less than I used to do, but probably more than people think I should do.
Right. So right. Explaining your boundaries. That's a good way to set boundaries. You can't just have, a lot of times, like I said earlier, we all have those unspoken boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But you may have to explain your boundaries and why
Yes.
they're boundaries for you. Why no, that's not a boundary. This is where I draw my boundary. This would be a boundary for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
but this boundary here, it may be your boundary, but it's not my boundary, and this is why.
Yes.
I like that. Okay, let me see here. Lori, do we got some? I've lost the chat.
Yeah, Adriana said, at work, I do struggle with boundaries. It's expected to wear many hats, and if you don't, it's considered not being a team player, but I'm working on those.
That is so true. A lot of us do wear many hats in the environment that we work in. And even if you're a peer support provider and you don't wear any other hat but a peer support provider in your organization or agency, you're still a family who could be navigating services actively with your own family. So you've got that going on. So even if it's not just our workplace that our hat is worn, but we wear hats all day long, and it is a struggle with those boundaries. Let me see here.
And Kaylin says, I have the ability. My agency is very adamant about self-care and setting boundaries with clients. They remind us that we are working to live, not living to work. I like that.
Yep.
And that this is, in fact, a job as selfless as the job may be.
I like that.
And it helps to hold staff accountable with boundaries when team leaders and supervisors emphasize it.
Right, emphasize it and model it, right, and encourage it. Encourage boundary setting and supports boundary setting, right, and is able to identify themselves and model boundary setting so that they don't also take advantage of you. So a couple of you have already spoke about, does your organization or agency have boundary policies? Kaylin said that about hers, but does anybody else know? Has your organization or agency talked about boundary setting or policies?
I think boundary setting is critical to an organization because it helps to prevent that staff burnout. That doesn't mean that doesn't happen still, but it does help slow that process down. So
yes, I totally agree. And a lot of times boundary setting isn't covered in policies. Ethically it is, such as not accepting gifts, don't do this, don't do that. Don't post on social media, bad stuff, because you're representing, so, but a lot of places don't have those boundary policies. So it would be good if they did. Ruth said Alliance Health is all about self-care and living well and providing time for us to do this. I love this. And then I think there was one before that. Nope. Oh, social media boundary. They preach self-care, but demand more with wearing of multiple hats. Yeah, you also have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, right? They have to walk the walk, not just say, oh, you got to do self-care, you got to set boundaries of self-care, but they also have to, your actions have to speak louder than your words. I've been rebuilding my boundaries from a previous job. You were at a call center supervisor, started with not using my personal phone to do work calls and respecting the schedule I've been given. I like that. I like that. So in all of this, right now, I want you guys to take just a hot second. And when you're done, you can put it in the chat, say done, yes. I want you to sit there for a couple of minutes and identify someone who could possibly be your accountability buddy, either professionally, personally, or both. You'd have 2 accountability buddies, one for each area of your life. And then, or you could have 4 or however many you want. So take a couple of minutes, and then when you've done it, just jot it down or keep it in your minds, whatever you would like to do. I'd like you to jot it down because I don't want you to forget that you need to reach out to this person and ask them to be an accountability buddy for you. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. All right, we got Duns coming in. So if you were unable to think of anybody, just keep thinking, and maybe you'll run across someone in your next couple of days you'll be like, hey, that would be a good accountability buddy for me. And you for them. You could support them too. You can go to the next slide if you would like, Lori, please. So this is my contact information. I don't know. I think the next slide is questions, isn't it, Lori?
Yeah.
This is my contact information. If you guys need anything or you aren't able to access the links on this slide, feel free to reach out to me. But I just wanted to make sure that you have that. Thank you for being on today. Thank you for having me. And I appreciated all this conversation. And for those of you that stayed, even though it wasn't trauma-informed care. So are there any questions, comments, or discussion?
I have one. So like with me being new into like still trying to get certified for my family partner and stuff. And I go to all of like the meetings and like all of that and stuff, and whatever anybody sends me, I always click on, because I feel like it's a way of me being able to get more exposed, more, networking, and more understanding of the actual job, the concepts, and different like ways of thinking and stuff like that. I find myself, I can get sent maybe about 10, 15 emails, and I will literally sign up for everything that's there. And I know one day I was literally in maybe about 7 webinars back to back. And then like my husband said, you're still on up there. You was up there when I went to work. I'm off work. And I was just like, well, I only got one more to go. And then and so it's like, I don't know how to, because it's still so much information to learn, and I want to be able to, give, the best care and be in the best mindset and stuff like that with the people, I'll start working with. How do you balance that part? Because
Yes.
this is where I kind of find
Yes.
myself like, whenever
Yeah.
somebody says something, I'm like, okay, I'll be there.
Right, exactly. It's kind of like you got to just take in this information. You got to say, yes, we'll be there. Oh, that's a good training. Yeah, I'll be there, even though I'm scheduled for 30 other things. You kind of do have to set boundaries there. I've done the same thing. I will sign up for trainings, and if they're being recorded, I'll sign up for them just so that I can get the recording and not necessarily attend them. I've set boundaries that way. If there are a couple of trainings that I've not been able to attend that I just didn't even sign up for, because I was like, if I sign up for this, they don't have the recording, I can't attend because I'm in 2 other meetings and I can't give it the time that it needs. If you don't set boundaries on what it is you want to get out immediately right now, right? Like, what do you want to get out of those trainings? Identify that. What are those outcomes? You can attend all the trainings that you want, but you'll eventually stop taking in information. So you're I won't say wasting your time, but you're not setting that boundary on your time limit and respecting your time and practicing that self-care. So you need to sign up for things that you can get resources from and visit them later. I've also I got a bunch of flags in my email where I flag things to come back to it, because it's something that I've scanned that I feel is important, and then I'll come back to it. So you've got to set boundaries. Robin said she's learned to schedule herself breaks and make sure she takes them. Get up and go for a walk, go outside, love on your puppies. I heard somebody was their self-care in the morning the other day in a meeting I was in was walking their dog, and she couldn't get on camera because it was so hot outside in North Carolina that she was already sweating after she took in a shower, but her self-care was walking her dog. That's totally fine. And if your training lacks over a break, reschedule that break somewhere in that day. But setting those boundaries to have those breaks, you know, there was one day I had so many meetings and so much. I don't think I ate until dinner time and didn't have time for a break to go to the restroom. And I was like, this has to stop, because if you're not taking care of yourself and scheduling those breaks and doing that self-care, you're gonna get burnout, you're gonna get stressed, and you're gonna stop intaking information. So my suggestion for, you know, you trying to get all that training underneath of you and making sure you're getting seen and stuff, sharing the information is a way to get seen. Registering for the things, if they're going to record it or send out information that you can go listen to later, just later, whenever you have time, if you have time.
Or at least get the handouts.
Yeah, and get the handouts. Yep, the handouts, and like this training right here. There may be people that signed up for it that didn't attend, but they're going to get a recording and they're going to get the PowerPoint, right? So they'll get the resources and stuff just like you did, and then be able to see the conversation that we've had here from the recording. I hope that answers.
Yeah, this comment says it was a good training. Please reiterate when you can rewatch this. So you'll get a follow-up email in the next 2 business days from Bridget, and the recording link will be in that. And switching gears can be difficult for many people.
It really can. And switching gears could be setting boundaries, setting those boundaries to switch gears, to be able to have more time, to step away from the computer and not answer that email.
Very good. If there's any more that we can talk about, we've got plenty of time. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to give you about 15 minutes of your day back.
You guys are so welcome, and I hope that you have good success in setting up some boundaries and identifying and speaking with your accountability buddy.
Stacy, you're awesome. Thank you so much for your time and for putting this together. I was looking through the ethics thing from Fredla to see if there were any specific boundary scenarios we could go through, but I didn't, in my rush, didn't quite see them. But that is still a very good ethics learning event. And it's got a lot of really great discussion items in there with those scenarios that you can go through and help, you know, walk through those. And
it seems to be more of a boundary setting with the accepting of gifts, with doing your time, what your time looks like, how much you give of yourself to families and how less you give of yourself to the families. So it's more of that boundary setting versus setting up your own self boundaries.
Right. Next month, we will not be here together, but we will resume this event in August, and it will be on August 28th. We have a great speaker lined up for trauma-informed care, so I hope you'll join us for that. And if you are here today, you are registered for that meeting as well. But if you have colleagues that would be interested in this, I would so recommend that you share this link on this slide with them. And then after August, we'll get a new link. So remember, you'll have to resubmit, but I'll remind you in August about that. So again, you'll get your certificate, you'll get a copy of this presentation, and you'll get a link to the recording of this. And the resources that Stacy put into her presentation are very important. So please take a minute to go in and look at those resources as well. We need to keep hearing from you to bring these, so please complete the survey. You'll get that right after the end of this session. You'll get a survey. It just takes a few minutes and it gives us really a lot of great information on how to move forward. We've got some ideas for thoughts about next year's family exchange events. So, but if you have an idea of something that's really, you think a topic that would be very helpful to a larger group, please let me know what that is. And I'm more than happy to include that in our schedule for next year. These are the websites and how to get in touch with NTAC. So please stay connected with them through those when you get this. And here's all the contact information. If you are in need of any consultation of any kind, please, you can contact NTAC. They will put you in touch with one of the many partners that we have at NTAC. So please feel free to do that if you need some additional help or request technical assistance. And SAMHSA's mission is to reduce the impact of substance abuse and mental illness on America's communities. And that's what we all want. We all want that. And thank you so much for your time. Bridget, thank you for your support, tech support here. And please look forward to seeing you all in August, and have a great July. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stacy. And give your mother my best.
I will. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay. Bye, everyone.